let's jump into a deep dive that takes us straight into this world of like high-end cycling apparel.
Ooh, yeah, where performance meets fashion, right?
Exactly. We're talking RAIpha, and I think they've become pretty legendary among serious cyclists, you know?
Yeah, and what's really cool about this deep dive is we're getting a behind-the-scenes look
Yeah.
at what's going on.
Because it's not some like official report or anything, it's this super engaged group chat between 3 cyclists, Warren, Alex, and Tony. And these guys are clearly really into the sport, and they're having this debate, this pretty lively debate about whether RAIpha is, and I'm going to use Warren's words here, fucked.
Yeah, that's quite a statement from Warren.
All right.
And that really sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about today. And for those who maybe aren't super familiar with RAIpha, they've built this reputation for this premium cycling apparel and this really unique network of clubhouses all around the world.
Yeah.
These are exclusive spaces for members of the RAIpha Cycling Club, where they can meet up, they can ride, they can just kind of like immerse themselves in the world of RAIpha.
Gotcha. So it's more than just a store then.
Oh, yeah. Definitely more than just a store.
Okay.
It's an experience. It's a community.
So back to this chat. Warren seems pretty convinced that RAIpha is in trouble.
Right.
And he is pointing the finger at these clubhouses.
Yeah.
He even suggests they'd be better off just like ditching the physical spaces and just going online.
Right. Which is, an interesting thought in today's day and age. But
Yeah.
Alex, another guy in the chat, totally disagrees with this.
Uh-huh.
He is very much in favor of those clubhouses.
Interesting.
He argues that they create this like aura of exclusivity and community that you just can't replicate online no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
He even suggests like raising the membership fees
Oh, wow.
to lean into that exclusivity and like really amp up the FOMO.
That fear of missing out.
Exactly. Yeah. Make it feel even more exclusive. Like, ooh, I got to be a part of this.
I mean, I see what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's a bold strategy, that's for sure.
It is bold. Yeah.
But Warren brings up a good point, right?
Yeah.
These clubhouses are only really useful to the people who live near them.
That's true.
So how much are they really contributing to RAIpha's, bottom line?
That's a great question. And that's where this conversation starts to get into some of those bigger challenges that businesses are facing today.
Okay.
Because going online only might seem like the obvious answer in a world where, we buy everything on Amazon and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Alex makes this super insightful point that going online only is not necessarily like this magical cost-saving solution.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
He says that customer acquisition costs online have just gone through the roof recently.
Really?
Yeah, and he suggests that might actually be a part of what's hurting RAIpha's profitability.
So even if their online sales are good, the cost of actually getting those new customers could be like eating into their profit.
Exactly. That's exactly what he's saying.
Wow. So it's way more complicated than just, let's just sell everything online and we'll be fine.
Way more complicated. And that's something that any business with an online presence is dealing with these days.
Right.
And it raises this really fundamental question.
Yeah.
What is that ideal balance between growth and profitability?
Right. Because you can't have one without the other. Right.
Exactly.
You need to be making money, but you also need to be growing.
Yeah.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, I guess.
It is. It's finding that sweet spot. And that's something that I think all businesses, no matter what industry they're in, are really struggling with right now.
And it's just so interesting to me how these guys in their casual cycling chat are touching on this huge business dilemma.
It is. It's like we're getting this little window into like the boardroom of a major company through the lens of these passionate cyclists.
Right, exactly. And then what really got me was Alex's theory that maybe RAIpha is trying to be what he calls artificially large.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting phrase.
What does that even mean? Artificially large?
Well, think of it this way. Maybe RAIpha is like dumping tons of money into online marketing and expanding into all these new product lines just to, boost their sales.
Okay.
But those efforts might not actually be translating into sustainable profits.
Right.
So it's like they're stretching themselves super thin to try to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I get it.
And that could be hurting their core business.
So it's not just about getting bigger. It's about making sure that growth is like healthy and sustainable.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It's like, if you're trying to grow a plant too quickly, you might end up with this tall, spindly plant that's not actually very strong.
That's a great analogy.
It's just going to fall over.
Exactly. It needs that strong base.
Yeah, so maybe sometimes, and this is what I'm getting from Alex, maybe sometimes it's smarter to kind of shrink back and focus on what you're really good at.
Yeah, like really refine that.
Exactly.
And hone it and make sure that's rock solid.
And that leads us into another thread in this chat, which is about RAIpha's brand strategy.
Right.
Like how they've been positioning themselves in the market.
Right.
And Warren mentions this needless swipe that RAIpha took at former pro cyclist David Millar in their marketing.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Well, unfortunately, they don't really get into specifics.
Okay.
But it definitely makes you curious, right?
It does, yeah.
It's like, what's the backstory there?
What happened? Right. Yeah.
It just makes you wonder about all those behind-the-scenes dynamics in the pro cycling world.
Yeah, and maybe there's a little bit of like competitive rivalry there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it definitely highlights how a brand like RAIpha has to like really carefully navigate those relationships and personalities.
Yeah.
As they try to appeal to their target audience.
And I just love how this chat is giving us this glimpse into the cycling world.
It is.
And not just the business side of things.
Yeah, the culture.
The personalities.
The dynamics.
And the dynamics that shape this whole industry.
And it's not all serious business talk either. Like these guys are clearly having fun.
Right.
Their banter really gives you a sense of the personality of the cycling community.
Yeah, like that whole debate about which cities deserve a RAIpha clubhouse.
Oh, yeah.
They use the spending habits of a cyclist named Bobby Bicycles as like the ultimate measure.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's so funny, right?
Yeah, so like if your city doesn't have a RAIpha clubhouse, maybe it's because you don't have enough Bobby Bicycles there.
Exactly. Like, is your city Bobby Bicycles approved? That's the new standard.
That should be the new standard.
It's funny, but it also speaks to, how passionate cyclists are about their local scenes.
Absolutely.
And how a brand like RAIpha can tap into that sense of like local pride.
That's a great point.
And then there's this whole other discussion about a vintage, like 90s style Gore-Tex cycling jacket.
Oh.
It sparks all these jokes about rock racing aesthetics and scouring Facebook Marketplace for like hidden gems.
It's great. It's such a fun little glimpse into those trends within cycling fashion.
And I knew there was a reason why I held on to my old Gore-Tex jacket from like the early 2000s.
You were ahead of the curve.
Maybe it's going to come back in style.
There might be, yeah.
But I have to admit, I am totally lost on the rock racing aesthetics reference.
Oh, okay, yeah. So rock racing was this pro cycling team back in like the late 2000s.
Yeah, sure.
And they were known for really pushing the boundaries of cycling fashion.
Interesting.
Think like bold colors, really unconventional designs, just a general air of flamboyance.
So like the fashion rebels of the cycling world.
Exactly, yeah. And it's a great example of how cycling apparel can be so much more than just functional. It can be a real statement of personal style and even a way to identify with a particular subculture within the sport.
Totally.
So yeah, that's rock racing aesthetics in a nutshell.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the whole clubhouse debate to the challenges of online retail, a little cycling fashion history.
That's a lot, yeah.
I feel like I've learned so much already.
Good.
This is great.
I'm glad. And we're just getting started.
Oh, wow, there's more.
There's more, yeah.
Okay, I can't wait.
We're going to dive even deeper into the RAIpha story.
Okay.
And look at how all of this reflects the bigger trends shaping the entire cycling industry.
I am hooked. Can't wait to get into it. So we've been really digging into this debate between Warren, Alex, and Tony about what RAIpha should do. And it's crazy how much their conversation really mirrors what's happening in so many other industries,
Oh, absolutely. It's like whether you're into cycling or tech or fashion.
Yeah, exactly.
Like so many businesses are facing these similar challenges.
So I'm curious, what are some of the bigger takeaways we can get from this group chat? How do their opinions on RAIpha connect to those bigger trends you were talking about?
Well, one of the biggest trends that's reflected here is this rise of direct-to-consumer online brands.
Oh, you mean those brands that cut out the middleman?
Exactly.
They don't have a retail store, they just sell straight from their website.
Yeah, and those brands are putting a ton of pressure on companies like RAIpha.
I can see how that would be tough because those online-only brands can offer lower prices, right?
Right, because they don't have to pay for all that overhead.
Like rent and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So they can really undercut the prices.
Yeah, and that brings us back to Alex's point about the rising cost of customer acquisition online.
Right.
Even if a company can sell a product for less, they still got to spend money to reach those new customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Convince them to buy from them.
And it's so crowded online, like so many brands are competing for attention.
Oh, it's incredibly competitive.
So those costs, I bet, can get pretty high.
It can get really high, yeah.
So it's not as easy as just being like, all right, let's move everything online and we're going to be swimming in cash.
No, not at all.
It's way more nuanced than that.
Way more nuanced. And I think that's something that any business with an online presence is grappling with right now.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it raises this really fundamental question.
Okay.
How do you balance that growth with profitability?
Right, because you can't have one without the other.
You can't, and that's the dilemma.
You need to be making money, but you also need to be, like, reaching new people.
Yeah, you got to keep growing.
It's like this constant tension, I guess.
It is. It's finding that sweet spot.
And I think that's true for any business.
I think so, too.
But not just, like, in the cycling world.
Yeah, no matter what you're selling.
It's so interesting to me that these guys, just in their casual cycling chat, are touching on this huge business dilemma.
It is. It's like we're getting this peek behind the curtain of how businesses actually work.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And what really struck me was Alex's theory that maybe RAIpha is trying to be what he calls artificially large.
Oh, right. That phrase really stuck with me, too.
What does that even mean?
Like, he's saying they're stretching themselves too thin, trying to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's like, imagine you're blowing up a balloon.
Okay.
And you keep blowing and blowing and blowing.
Mm-hmm.
But the balloon's getting really thin.
Right.
And it's about to pop.
You're pushing it to its limit.
Exactly. And that's kind of what he's suggesting RAIpha might be doing.
So what would it look like for them to, like, shrink back a bit? Like, what would they have to change?
Well, it could involve, like, scaling back their marketing spend, maybe being more selective about the products they're offering, maybe reconsidering, how many stores they have.
So maybe closing some of those clubhouses that Warren's so skeptical about?
Potentially, yeah.
But I thought Alex was saying those were crucial for their image.
He did, yeah, so it's a tough call.
It's a real balancing act.
It is, and that's where the strategic thinking comes in.
Yeah.
What are the costs and benefits of each approach?
Right.
What aligns best with RAIpha's long-term vision?
And maybe that means making some hard choices,
It might.
Maybe they decide to focus on a smaller group of really dedicated customers.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to appeal to, like, everyone.
Exactly. It's about figuring out what truly sets them apart.
What makes them unique.
Exactly. And then doubling down on those strengths.
It's funny, you wouldn't think a conversation about cycling apparel would have such, like, broad relevance. But the more we get into this chat, the more I see how it connects to challenges that businesses are facing, like, all over the place.
I agree. It's like these specific examples. They offer these insights that have way more application than you might think at first glance.
And it makes for a much more interesting deep dive than, just reading some boring industry report.
Oh, for sure.
So now that we've kind of explored the bigger picture, are you ready to, like, circle back to some of those really colorful details?
Lou, absolutely. Those are my favorite parts.
Me too. Like, that whole thing about the vintage Gore-Tex jacket, that was pure gold.
Oh, that was such a good one.
It really made me think about how cycling fashion has, like, evolved over the years.
Yeah, it's come a long way.
Yeah, that vintage Gore-Tex jacket thing was awesome, and it made me think about, like, how cycling fashion has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to see some of those retro looks coming back?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Fashion always seems to, like, come full circle.
Right.
But that conversation, it also highlighted something else that's really important, especially for brands like RAIpha.
Okay.
It's like the emotional connection that cyclists have with their gear.
Yeah, it's not just about, like, how well it works. It's about, like, style and nostalgia and, like, a sense of identity even.
Exactly. It's like an extension of themselves in a way.
Totally.
And that's something that, RAIpha's always been really good at, creating those products and experiences that, like, tap into those deeper emotions.
But as we've seen from this chat, even the most diehard RAIpha fans have different opinions about what the brand should, like, focus on going forward.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Everyone wants something a little different.
Exactly. Some people are all about that exclusivity.
Right.
Others value the community aspect more. And some are just, all about performance.
So if you were advising RAIpha, like, what would you tell them? What's the secret to success in this market that's constantly changing?
Honestly, I don't think there is one secret.
Yeah.
It's about being adaptable. It's about being willing to experiment. And, like, always staying connected to what you're customers want.
So it's about asking questions, getting feedback,
Right.
and being open to new ideas, even if they're a little scary.
Absolutely. And maybe even making some tough decisions.
Yeah.
Like maybe scaling back on certain things, or even letting go of some things that, maybe were once core to the brand, but aren't working anymore.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It can be, but sometimes you got to do it.
Like to grow and evolve?
Exactly. It's like, pruning a tree.
Oh, another analogy.
I can't help myself.
I love it. It makes it so much easier to understand these complex business concepts.
I'm glad it helps.
But speaking of engaging, what stands out to you as the most interesting thing from this whole deep dive?
Honestly, it's that even though we've been talking about one specific brand, RAIpha,
Yeah.
a lot of these themes we've touched on, they're universal.
They apply to everyone.
Yeah. The challenges of selling online versus in person, the importance of having a strong brand.
And constantly changing and adapting.
Exactly. Those are things that businesses of all shapes and sizes are dealing with right now.
Absolutely. So even if you're not a cyclist, you can still learn a lot from this conversation about RAIpha.
I think so, too.
It's about understanding these bigger trends and how they're shaping the business world.
Right. And how to, navigate them successfully.
Exactly. It's all about keeping your finger on the pulse.
And staying curious.
Yeah.
You gotta stay informed.
And that's what we're trying to do with these deep dives, right?
That's exactly it.
To make people think.
Yeah, spark curiosity.
And equip them with the knowledge they need to, succeed in this crazy world.
That's the goal.
I think we did a good job.
I think so, too.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up.
All right.
But before we go, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the challenges they're facing, but RAIpha has built this incredible following, and they have a reputation for being the best.
Yeah.
They've clearly done something right.
They have.
It's going to be fascinating to see where they go from here.
I agree. It's a journey worth following.
For sure.
Not just for cycling fans, but anyone who's interested in business and branding.
And how the world of retail is changing.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those wheels turning.